Shalom. All praise is due to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Recha Quadash, double honors to the elect, apostle, bishops, elders, that great most known, ever well. Shalom to the elect, Akadidums, working sincerity and truth, and not for vainglory, in season out of season. Shalom to the elect men, women, sons, and daughters of the nation of Israel, which are the elect men, women, sons, and daughters of you so-called Negroes, West Indian, Haitians, Hispanics, Latinos, Native Americans, Seminole Indians, scattered to the four corners of the earth. Okay, so I just want to bring this out. All these curses befell us as a people, as the 12 tribes of Israel, Negroes, West Indian Haitians, Latinos, Native Americans, Hispanics, West Indian Haitians. All these curses befell us because we broke Yahweh. We broke his law, statutes, commandment, his law, statutes, and commandments, and his covenant, that his holy covenant that he made with us, and his holy law, statutes, and commandments. So you go into the book of Deuteronomy, 20th chapter and the 15th verse, it tells you all the curses that was going to come upon us. Okay. But now these curses starting to come on the so-called white man. Okay. Him specifically, it's coming on the heathen nations too. But it's coming on the so-called white man. That's what I want to focus on too. Okay, this is Deuteronomy, the 30th chapter and the 7th verse. Okay, it says, and Yahweh thy God will put all these curses upon thine enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecute thee. And first and foremost, all the curses that came on the nation of Israel, okay, which are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, being put in slavery, okay, by the so-called white man, and Africans and East Indians and Arabs and so forth. Your businesses, Black Wall Street, Rosewood, Seneca Park, but all these curses are coming on the so-called white man, okay, and these heathen nations, okay, but the so-called white man, look at their farms. President Trump, the Orange Ranger, he's the Orange Ranger, which I got off of somebody off of YouTube, the Orange Ranger. They want aid, they need aid from these farms because President Trump, he's shutting these farms down. He's putting all these tariffs on these nations, these heathen nations, and they can't sell their crops to the heathen nations, So they're begging that cruel Lord, okay, DJ Trump, to subsidize their farms, to give them money, So, yeah, okay, So all these curses that came upon, so-called black people after slavery, they had farms, man, that they put their blood, sweat, and tears into, and they had their farms, and then years later, so-called white man came and took their farms, from you so-called black people, man, okay, which is the head tribe of Yahweh. Okay, that's his Hebrew name. Okay, so they flooded your neighborhoods, like Seneca Park over there in Central Park. They flooded that shit because that was so-called black people used to live there. Took them out, so-called African Americans. Okay, and they flooded many other towns and stuff that you so-called Negroes were dwelling at. But see, now these curses are coming upon his ass now, So his businesses is not doing too good, So-called white man I'm talking about. All right. It says, because they're our enemies. Okay. They're our enemies. They're the ones who put us in slavery. Okay. So they're our enemies. And they're enemies to the same very day. They're murdering us in the streets. The police, they're putting all kind of biological warfare, chemical warfare. You know what I'm saying? They're doing everything in their power, putting so-called Negroes, West Indian, Haitians, Latinos, and Native Americans, Hispanics in the slums, on the reservations, while they live in the suburbs, you know. Then they have the police, the taskmaster, you know, to keep us downtrodden, man, to keep us desolate, okay? And straight up just to murder us, okay? It says, thine enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. Yeah, slavery. I'm talking about not just the so-called black man or so-called black woman. I'm talking about the West Indians. I'm talking about the Haitians. I'm talking about the Latinos. I'm talking about the Spanish. I'm talking about the Native Americans. All of us have been slaves under the so-called white man. Okay? All right? So let's go to at least 2 curses mentioned in the book of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. All right? We can start at the, let me see, 28 and 17th verse. All right, and the 17th verse. Okay. It says, curse shall be thy basket in thy store. Yeah, so look at them farmers, yo. What was it? It was Arkansas, I believe. But now, see, Esau and his farms are starting to suffer, man. Okay? Because all them tariffs that, you know, the Orange Ranger, President Trump is putting on these Chinese and so forth, the good old American white farmers, they suffering. So their businesses is being cursed. See, all these curses shall come upon thy enemies, which hate thee and persecute thee. And it's all the heathen nations, but the main one is who? Esau, which is the so-called white man. Curse shall be thy basket and thy store. Represents their businesses. You know, a lot of businesses have gone under. Okay, that you so-called white men have, and white women have set up. You know, especially during the COVID, a lot of you so-called white people's businesses were shut down because you wasn't making money. You know, and even now to the same very day, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. You know, they done closed down factories. I mean, they did a lot of things. You know, now they shipping off. They ICE. They shipping out all the tribe of Issachar, which would be so-called Mexicans. What are these factories gonna do, yo? They just laid off a couple of companies that so-called white people own. They laid off like thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Okay? Yeah. You know? So the businesses are suffering. All right? I forget the name of a couple of companies that, oh yeah, I think Cadbury, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? You know, and a couple of other European and American businesses, man. Okay? Okay? So it says, curse shall be thy basket in thy store. Just like how the so-called black woman, just how the so-called African-American man and African-American woman, see how they set up businesses and eventually they close down. You know, that whole situation with the turkey hut out there. Okay? I think out there in Texas. You know, so all the businesses throughout the years that you so-called African Americans, as you would call yourself, as a so-called white man called you, your businesses are shutting down, yo. You know? So is you Latinos and Native Americans, man. Your businesses are shutting down too. You know? But now, see, this is coming on the so-called white man. Now they're on YouTube and TikTok crying about what what Trump is doing to them. Yeah, well, them curses gonna come upon you, Esau, which is a so-called white man. It says, curse shall be, 18th verse. It says, curse shall be the fruit of thy body. Yeah, because, you know, a lot of you white men, so-called white man, Esau, a lot of you is sterile, man. Not sterile, but shit, you can't have kids. You can't have babies, man. You know? I know you don't got enough sperm in you. The so-called white man, the so-called white woman, she's infertile. They're coming out with all kind of goddamn weirdo diseases and being born with cancer and all type of manner, all type of madness. Okay, you know. So, well, all them curses came upon the nation of Israel concerning their sons and daughters having babies, you know, getting aborted before they even come out the womb, you know, coming out with birth defects, you know, being taken away, you know, by different government agencies like ACS and all that stuff like that, you know. Now it's coming on you so-called white people, okay? All right? It says, curse shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind and the flocks of thy sheep. Yeah, so all this stuff is happening. All these curses are slowly coming right on the so-called white man. All right, so yeah, I just wanted to bring that out. Okay, Esau now, and you know, this is just the inkling of what Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai is going to do to you for your holy blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. Excuse me, the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, saying that the Lord is the so-called white man. Okay, you got him pictured up around the earth as the Lord being a so-called white man. I'm talking about JC, Jesus Christ. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, all right. You know, and then also too, speaking proud against Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. All right, and persecuting his people, which are you so-called Negroes, West Indian, Haitians, Latinos, Hispanics, Native Americans, Seminole Indians. So if you've been edified with that, shalom.